All right, folks, we're going to get started because we have a tour starting at 7:20. So I'm Brian Howarth. I'm the assistant to the city manager, also the city's economic development manager. And with me tonight are a couple new faces. We have Paul Dybel, who's our community development project manager. He's on contract to the city to get some of the economic development projects underway. He's also a former community development director of Montebello, Burbank, and San Fernando. Steve Masura, you all met him in the community development section. Steve and I are both former economic developers. We used to be economic development managers in other cities, so this is a topic that's near and dear to our heart. And then we have Peter Choi, who's in the back. If you haven't met him, he's our new Chamber of Commerce CEO and president, and he'll be talking tonight about some of the things going on at the chamber level.
Do you want to introduce Michael Carson too?
Oh, I'm sorry. Michael Carson. He just joined the Gateway project team, so you're going to hear everything you want to know about the construction schedule, tenant recruitment, everything. He's got the answers. So we're delighted to have you here, Michael. So as we've talked about, tonight's session is economic development. And we figured rather than giving you a boring PowerPoint, we're actually going to go out to the tour and see what's going on out in the city, because we just feel it's much more effective to do that. So real quick, we're going to give you the basics of economic development, 15 minutes. Get in a bus for about an hour. Don't worry, it does have a restroom in case you need to use it. And then we will end with dinner. And I apologize for the quick turnaround on trying to get everyone on the bus, but when we planned the Citizens Academy back in May, it was still light at 8 o'clock. When I was coming home at 7:45 last night, it was already dark. So we'll get you guys in and out and on the bus. So the questions we will answer tonight is, what is economic development, why it's important, and what initiatives are underway. But I don't know if everybody knows what economic development is, because economic development, if not defined right, can be a cheesy buzzword, a buzzword that marketers use. Economic development is something that is defined by a community, because each community's needs are different. Economic development is a shared responsibility. It's not the city's responsibility or just the chamber's responsibility. It's everybody's responsibility. And it's also a set of evolving goals. The main word in there is economy. The economy changes, market trends changes. The desires and needs of a community changes. So economic development, you've always got to stay competitive. So economic development has become a buzzword that can kill a community's buzz. And in the economic development worlds that we see, economic development is about enhancing quality of life, or economic development is about being business friendly. Well, that's nice, but what is it exactly to be business friendly, or to have great quality of life, or to pursue opportunity? And so you have a lot of these catchphrases from a lot of cities, but you don't see any meat behind it. So economic development is not marketing speak. It's actually a list of projects or a list of quantifiables. So economic development can mean different things to different communities. I used to work for the communities of Ventura and Rancho Cordova. And the economic development model or focus for Ventura was about tourism and about green technology. In Rancho Cordova, which is up towards Sacramento, it was about making sure that they kept their call centers and making sure they didn't go to India. The other one was about corridor revitalization. Where Steve used to work in Santa Fe Springs, it was about business-to-business sales. You had a huge business sector there. They wanted to make sure that sales were going between both businesses and keeping the revenue in the city rather than going out of the city. And in Carson, it was about economic diversification, taking Carson away from an industrial base and bringing it to more of a commercial and service sector base. So for Temple City, the focus here is adaptive reuse. It's about business retention, and it's about placemaking. Those are our three key components of economic development. So you might want to know what are these terms. Adaptive reuse is basically repurposing buildings through policy and incentives. And this is really important for Temple City because we are an old community, or not older community really. We're built out. There's not a whole lot of room to grow. So we have to look at what we have and see how do we make it better, how do we use it, how do we provide some type of policy, whether it's a rezoning of the property or some kind of a tax break to bring in a new business in to address the vacancies that you are seeing on Las Tunas. Another one is business retention, keeping businesses here and helping them grow. Temple City has 900 businesses, and it's always easier to keep a business here than it is to go and attract a new business. There's that saying, one bird in the hand is better than two in the bush. And the last thing is placemaking, about creating unique destinations and amenities to put Temple City on the map. There are not a whole lot of, Temple City's a great community, but there's not a regional draw. It's not like if you were to talk about Pasadena or Monrovia, you don't have a real defined downtown. You don't have a vibrant public arts program. What are those things that are going to make people want to come to Temple City and invest their dollars here? Economic development, it's about teamwork. Again, we talked about how no one sector of the community is responsible for economic development. Everyone has their roles and responsibilities. Government, our role is to provide business incentives. Again, rezoning, tax breaks, a pro-business climate, whether it's working closely with the Chamber of Commerce, making sure that there's somebody at City Hall who only deals with all things like expedited development reviews and ombudsman, essentially. Government also provides leadership and facilitation. There are going to be economic development decisions that communities deal with all the time. You have to have a council that's going to take it on the chin for making hard decisions, because every community has to make hard decisions. And then finally, quality amenities. You need to make sure that the businesses and the residents that you serve, that we have the sidewalks, the infrastructure in place, the high quality services. The business community, I wrote it incorrectly for a reason, because the business community isn't just about businesses. It's about business property owners. It's about the Chamber of Commerce, other types of business advocacy groups. And the business community really is responsible for tenant attraction. And the best owners know how to be competitive. They know who their market is. They're also responsible for making sure that their facilities are competitive, being well maintained, up to date. The business community needs to be proactive and strategic, and they also need to make sure that their tenants provide quality services to their customer base. The public is really important to this process. The public, their role is to provide input and to drive a real consensus to what do they want economic development to be in their community. The public also needs to take some stewardship. If we do look at some of the more successful models out there, like Old Town Monrovia, I'm just using that as an example, they have a business improvement district. Their business owners and their property owners took it upon themselves to put a fee on themselves, but to make them a strong marketing arm of this valley and to really create a draw. And the other thing is the public is there for new resources. What that I mean is by ideas. We get a lot more ideas from the public than we do just talking amongst ourselves. So the economic development cycle, it's pretty clear cut. What it comes down to, money makes the world go round, and it makes Temple City go round. If we don't have money, we cannot provide the services for people. If we don't have new investment, new businesses coming in, we can't expand our tax base. And if we can't expand our tax base, we don't get more revenues. And without the revenues, you don't have the services here that make Temple City a great place to live. So economic development, it is a continuous evolving and it's a competitive process. There's no way to be complacent in economic development. You have to stay on top of it. You have to understand what the regional trends are, what are the market trends, and try to figure out how to adapt that in your own community. So the game plan for next year for economic development, the first thing that we'll be looking at is pursuing shovel-ready projects. That means facilitating the development reviews with the Gateway project, which we'll be looking at in a couple of minutes, and then also getting the Rosemead Boulevard project off the ground. In fact, that project just went out for construction bid, and that project starts construction at the end of the year. The other initiative that we'll be looking at is engaging the public to define a 2-year strategy. What does the city want for economic development? So we'll be looking at our opportunities, our challenges, and figuring out what we want together for economic development. The next one is really interesting. It's defining the economic development fund parameters. In our finance discussion we had with Tracy House, we talked about how the city has a $21 million reserve and how we had to put together a general fund reserve policy that basically, if you were to look at the reserve as a pie, you have to carve out certain sections. The City Council put aside $8 million for economic development projects. But now what we need to do is figure out how are we going to use the $8 million. There needs to be criteria. Do we use it for only projects that are going to create X amount of new sales tax revenue coming in so that we can pay back that revenue? Is it only for public amenities? We don't know. And that's a huge discussion that the council and the community is going to have. The other one is looking at focusing on business retention and expansion. This is really important. We don't have a business visitation program. We have no idea on what the business sentiment is out there doing business. And if you look at our 20 businesses here in Temple, our top 20 businesses represent 50% of our sales tax revenue. So if one of them goes, we're up a creek. So we need to make sure that those top sales tax generators are happy, and that rather than them expanding elsewhere, that we can provide the tools for them to stay and expand in Temple City. The other thing that we'll be doing is facilitating key tenant attraction. We'll be talking about some new tenants that are going on in the area of Rosemary Boulevard and Las Tunas, and that area is really important because 40% of the city's sales tax is generated in that area. And once the Gateway project goes in, that amount is going to go up significantly. So that's really our real economic development core. And just for those of you who like statistics, Las Tunas, from city limit to city limit, that's about 20% of our sales tax base. So we need to look at how we're going to boost that. The other one is improving public amenities. Livability is huge here for economic development. There are sidewalks we need to put in. There's the Rosemary Boulevard project. We have new bike lanes. The reality is people pay $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 for new houses here, and they expect nothing but the best amenities. So we have to look at that segment of the population as well. And then finally, we're looking to create destinations. Two things that we'll be looking at of most timely importance is we just have a new public art program that's going. Actually, the ordinance will take effect September 20th, and we need to figure out what the future of public art is going to be here. Public art is actually an economic development generator, and you're going to see big components of public art along Rosemary Boulevard. As Rosemary Boulevard starts construction at the end of the year, we're also going to be starting work on what Las Tunas is going to look like. And the goal with that is, it takes about 2 years to design projects, especially at that scale. So once Rosemary Boulevard's done, then we would hopefully start construction on Las Tunas. And that's where we need the community's involvement is, what do you want for Las Tunas? Do you want it to be a downtown? Because right now, if you look at the layout of it, you've got cars going 40 miles an hour down the street, so you don't even know what businesses exist there unless you actually got out of your car. So it's some big changes coming up, a lot of opportunity for input, but public art and also the Las Tunas design is going to be two of our main focuses for next year. So that concludes just a real quick overview. We're going to have a lot of opportunity to ask questions and answers, or do questions and answers as we go on the bus. But a couple of real quick housekeeping items. September 18th, we talked about the group coming before the City Council at 7:30 to do a recognition and to talk about your class project. We've got that taken care of. We thought, since you're going to be here at 7:30, if you come at 6:30 and give us some feedback of what you thought worked, what didn't work, how can we better improve the academy, we'd love to hear your input on that. So with that being said, that just concludes our real quick 101. We will now get on the bus. That way we can still stay, that way we can see things while it's still light. And again, we'll have tons of opportunity for questions and answers. Now at Temple City and Woodruff, it looks like a big concrete pad. So that used to be actually home to an Alpha Beta supermarket, and that's what people call it. So.
How many years ago?
From what we understand, about 25 years. And from what we understand, it burned down.
Yeah, let's go someplace. Burned down. I know. I got in trouble because
the $8 million for economic development, for how many years is that going to be used for? Over how many? 5 years, 3 years?
That's a good question, and that's something we have to talk about with the council. They're going to have to make some huge policy decisions, but for them to just get over that hurdle and allocating the funds, that's huge. So. Although I can tell you right now that when I worked for the city of Ventura, we had a $5 million economic development fund, and it was basically a revolving loan fund. So it would only fund projects that would generate a threshold of sales tax revenue, and the sales tax revenue had, or the loan had to be paid back within 10 years.
You know, it's the heart of the city and it's the heart of the business community as well. So how do you make sure and maintain that these businesses survive and do well and don't become old and tired? And the city's has done a lot of things up to now to improve the downtown. We do have a commercial facade improvement program. We have been trying to do things to attract new businesses, but there is still some vacancies and there's still some older facades and things like that that need work. And the current streetscape that's here, you know, was done way back in the early 90s. And before that, we've done some good things with some of the downtown public parking lots. But you know that we're doing a downtown parking study to try to find some ways to improve that and to accommodate new businesses. You've heard that you know, being business friendly is just not enough. We are a business friendly city. We are a low cost city. Our business licenses are below the average and so forth for businesses. But we have to do more than that. So part of that is creating a really good environment, improving the aesthetics of the city. So you're going to hear a lot more about we just issued an RFP for the Las Tunas Enhancement Design Services to actually start doing some things similar to what we did with Roseby Boulevard to redo the downtown. And I'm just going by our list of things here. You know, some of the vacancies here are due to the recent economic downturn. So it makes it a little more difficult to fill those spaces. But also these are older spaces, they're kind of obsolete, they're smaller spaces, so it's hard to attract newer national retailer types of businesses. We've had success with some new restaurants coming in that are taking advantage of the very good demographics in the city with very high average household incomes. But again, we have to do more than that. Just having good demographics isn't enough. So you've heard some of the things that we're starting to do and that we're going to continue to do and that we're going to do in the future. So one of the current things that we're working on very proactively is our phase program, which is a focused area strategic enforcement that has resulted we've started at the west end of the city, going property by property, and I'm going to turn it over to Robert Sahagan, our Public Services Safety Manager, to talk a little bit more about that.
Hi everyone. So with regard to phase, if everybody remembers when we talked about the residential phase portion of it, when we had the public safety, it wasn't the public safety, I can't remember what you said. There you go, that one. We talked about the residential. In the commercial portion of phase, what we've done is we've started off at the west end of the city and we're working our way down. And what that's involved is staff going out and literally taking a picture or compiling a photographic inventory of every facade in the city along Las Tunas, something that we never had in the past. We never had a historical database for facades. After we completed that, we then starting on the west side, working our way forward, staff, which included enforcement staff and planning staff, would literally sit down in a room. We sit down and we look at the facade, and by looking at the facade, the planning and enforcement staff looks at it and says, this is wrong with it, that's wrong with it, that's wrong with it, everything from the signage to dilapidated exteriors to painting, siding, so on and so forth, and we send out a nice little letter. It's not a citation, it's just letting you know we've taken a look at your business, this is what's wrong with it, please address it. And that goes out to the property owner and the business owner. Shortly thereafter, we assign just one planner to handle this, so that way when business owners come in, the last thing that they want to do is they don't want to go to 3 different planners, 2 different officers, so it's one officer, one planner that handle all of this. We then talk to them and let them know what it is that's wrong. We are probably down to about Primrose right now. I'm sorry, not Primrose, a little bit past Rosemead, and we are at about a 70% clip of compliance already. So if you really don't start to notice it unless you either walk or you they're just something different. And that different is facades are getting repainted, excessive signage is being removed, new signage is being put up, and old non-conforming signage is coming down. Now, along with that, I'll end it with this. We're doing our part. I mean, the business owners and the residents and the property owners are doing their part. Well, we want to do ours as well. Because more oftentimes than not, when we say this to a business owner, he or she is going to come back to us and say, you haven't done my street, you haven't repainted, right? I mean, we understand it. So on our part, if you can tell, we've repainted all the curbs on Las Tunas. Before the city used to steam clean the sidewalks once a quarter. We're going to start doing them once a month. We used to clean the sidewalks once a month. We're going to start doing them once a week, and that'll increase to twice a week. We're going to put up new traffic signage, new street signage with the new city logo on it. We are going to repaint your park benches away, a little bit away from the green that's out there now, maybe a black. And we're doing other physical improvements just to brighten and bring a vibrant commercial corridor. So, yes, we're done.
Any quick burning questions? Yes. Ken?
The numbers on the across the street, you see the nice big numbers, would that be the other one that's the size?
Yeah, the fire department does require a certain minimum size, but we do like to have them bigger so that people know where they're getting going when, looking for a place to shop. Yeah, the facade improvement program, just to talk a little more about that. Currently, we provide up to $25,000 for facade improvements, and we've only budgeted about $100,000, so we can only do 3 or 4 a year. So, but that's for more major facade improvements, where they might redo a whole new facade, including parapets and moldings and architecture and windows and awnings and signage. We're actually in the process of revamping that a little bit to allow smaller loans and a little bit, and this council's going to consider funding it a little, putting some more resources into it, so we can actually, for businesses just want to upgrade their signage and their awnings, just paint, we're going to provide some funds for that. So you're going to see a big difference in that from what we've done in the past. So we expect that to make a big difference on Las Tunas. Jerry, you have a question?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Robert said, but I think it's terrible that the city has to spend money to clean the front of a business owner's sidewalk on a regular basis for something that they should be doing themselves.
Yeah, that's something that the question, Jerry's comment was, why is the city spending money to do all the sidewalk cleaning when the individual businesses should be doing that? To some degree, I think they do that, but it's more like sweeping and things like that. On the other hand, we do power washing, so we make sure the job is done right, and it makes it consistent throughout the whole city. But that's another topic of, should the downtown consider something like a business improvement district to help fund things like that, or marketing or other improvements in the downtown that they might like to see as a collective of all the businesses. And that's something the city's been talking about, but hasn't been really formally pushed yet with the chamber or the downtown. That's something to consider.
Gotcha.
Okay, now this is we're now at the Alpha Beta site, this vacant site over here. The city's in negotiations with the property owner, and I'm going to turn it over to Paul Dabble to give you a little bit more background on where we're at with that project.
Real quick, there is an illustration that Paul will be talking about in your packet, so it's there for you if you want to see what the project looks like.
Thanks, Steve. Brian. I'm under instructions that we're strictly limited to 5 minutes here, so I'm going to hit the high points and stick pretty close to my notes here. But the reason that we are visiting this site, including it on the tour, is that this is an example of the city using its economic development tools, and specifically a public-private partnership, to promote and be proactive in promoting development on a site. In this case, it's been vacant for apparently 25 years, so it's just not happening through the private sector. One of the objectives of economic development is to look at what's possible to make it happen, possibly with some city involvement. So As I said, it's been vacant for a long time. It's remained vacant because the property is still in the same ownership. It's been in the same family for all of this period of time, and it's their perspective, their experience that the past and existing zoning on the site just has not been conducive to a profitable development of the site on their part. That current zoning is under the city's specific plan. It was adopted in 2002, and to summarize, what it calls for and what it allows at this location on both sides of Temple City Boulevard is for retail, pedestrian, storefront, restaurant-oriented kinds of development that in land uses that would support, sustain, extend the city's downtown shopping district. And that continues to be the priority from the city's perspective from a planning standpoint. However, from an economic development standpoint, there is certainly the city would very much like to see a site that's been vacant for all this time developed with new, it's a very prominent location. The city would very much like to see some development here. So, in response to directions from the city council, staff has been in discussion with the owners / prospective developers of the site to see what's possible at this location. To just focus on the site a little bit, it's 56,875 square feet, which is 1.3 acres. It includes this pad in front of you where the Alpha Beta store used to be, but it also includes the commercial development on the corner there at Woodruff and Temple City Boulevard as part of the development site. So, contrary to the specific plan's commercial zoning of this area, the owners of the property see market demand and potential for residential development of this property. And they have come forward to the city initially with a proposal to develop this entire site as a residential condominium project with 50 condominium units in a multifamily residential building, 4 stories with parking, surface level parking, and partially structured parking. And although this is inconsistent with the zoning, the city has certainly not rejected a proposal for significant investment, significant development at this prominent vacant location in the downtown. But in light of the owner's assessment that such a larger development would not, well, let me back up for a second. What the city has proposed is that the developer and the city work together looking at alternatives, specifically including incorporation of the city's desired retail commercial uses on the ground floor in conjunction with 50 units of residential development on the upper levels. In other words, pursue the possibility of a mixed-use development on the site that would meet both the private development objectives as well as the city's planning objectives at this location. But by the same token, everybody recognizes that that's not, so far, and per the owner's assessment, that's not possible using only the developer's private resources through the private market. And so, what the city is looking at is a public-private partnership that would bring city resources to the project as a whole. An example of that would be, for example, since the site is constrained by its size and the zoning parking requirements and the zoning development standards to achieve these larger objectives, one possibility would be to look at incorporating the public parking lot that's across the alley there into the site itself, and thereby allow some of the retail uses such as restaurants to utilize that public resource as a way to support this larger development of the site. Looking at the block as a whole, there might even be other possibilities for more extensive structured public parking on the site as a whole, be financed through the project and with the city's participation. Maybe open up some of the existing parking for open space. One of the proposals in the mixed-use proposal that's in your packets shows some existing private open space kind of in a plaza on the ground level parking. However, in order to justify and accrue, or in In other words, in order to avoid a situation which is not permitted, whereby the city would be contributing its resources to a private enterprise that's called a gift of public funds and is not permitted, in order to avoid that, and just in order to justify this level of participation in the first place, the city would need to do an analysis of what the public benefits would be to this participation by the public in the project. And specifically, this is an analysis which is currently underway, and it would document, one, that this win-win approach to the project could be developed, or that this larger project could not be developed strictly in the private sector without the larger involvement of city resources, and secondly, that there are clear and specific public benefits to such participation by the city that go above and beyond the private project itself, such as additional parking in the downtown, such as additional open space, etc., etc. So, without going into what the design details of that would be, would just say that the future milestones for this would be if this analysis shows that those standards can be met, then additional negotiation with the current project would come forward to the City Council for review. This would all be done subject to public hearings, a very transparent process. So, again, without getting into additional detail, it's an example of the city using tools and resources to cause development that's beneficial to the community to occur at a location that's been vacant for 25 years and which wouldn't otherwise happen.
Thank you, Paul. That project, as you heard, is potentially a new, brand new development in the city that could provide housing and new commercial space for business attraction and providing new jobs and economic value to the city. And again, that's a new project where the city is considering something like a development agreement. And you're going to hear about, when we get to the Gateway project, another private development where it used to be a development agreement on with that site with redevelopment that has been voided because of the contentious problems there was with the piazza. But before I do talk about that, Carl Bloom has a question.
Right, just a comment on the site back there. Piece of property, the apartment buildings just south of the parking lot, the city parking lot. The city owns that property. So there's two properties we own. Yeah, just saying that last site we looked at, they talked about the city parking lot, but the apartment complex just south of that parking lot is also owned by the city, so that becomes in play also. And they bought that a few years back, thinking ahead to this type of thing.
That's a potential resource that can be brought into the mix. I'm sorry, I think that's what happened.
Yeah, so that's why we want to try to leverage those city resources of those parking lots to do some kind of a joint development that would get a better development there, basically, than what you could get on its own. And that's what we're in the process of doing. Now, this project, the Gateway project, you all have heard a lot about this. It's been, we've been, there's been the problems with the piazza, but as part of the settlement agreement, as I mentioned, the owner participation agreement, the redevelopment development agreement, was voided, which set the stage for a new development, which is more downscaled and only commercial. Prior to that, the piazza was a mixed-use residential commercial development. This one's much more downscale, to be focused on commercial and retail, which is what the city would like to see here on a major corner in the city, and one that we think is very nicely designed that will attract some national retailers, and it has a one level underground parking, which most of you have probably seen the plans on our website or when we were going through the process to approve this. But as part of the settlement agreement, basically there was no more city resource involvement as there was with the redevelopment, and therefore we basically said that we would cooperate to process the entitlements in an efficient manner, following all the normal local and state regulations for environmental review, etc., which we did. That was approved last April, and the project is now under construction. And the developer was fortunate to get some EB5 financing, which It basically is the national federal program for having foreign investment in return for getting citizenship. So basically it's about a $500,000 per investor, and it's basically a $20 million project, and currently they're at $11.5 million on the EB-5 financing, which has given them enough to basically fund the construction that they need. Beyond that, as they get more investors, that just will help them to not have to get private financing. And one of the benefits of the EB-5 program is the financing market right now is very difficult, especially with the economic downturn. Private financing is very hard to get. So this has been a really important thing for this project. And this project was more of a leader in this region for that type of investment. Now a lot of other places are actually doing that now. Jerry has a quick question, then I'm going to turn over to Michael Carson, the new project manager for the site. Yes, sir, Jerry.
Did you misspeak when you said it was a path to citizenship?
Yes.
You misspoke?
It's a okay, I'm corrected. It's a residency program, not necessarily citizenship.
Thank you.
Correct. Okay, Michael.
Hi everybody, again I'm Mike Carson. I'm just recently taken over as the project manager for this project. My tenure has been about a week, so I'm learning about the project as much as you are at this point. It's roughly an 80,000 square foot project with roughly 300 parking spaces, 2/3 of which will be in the subterranean parking. The project is divided into 4 building areas. The larger tenant that we're looking at, the anchor tenant, will be in the rear portion of the site here, the northeast corner. That'll be about a 40,000 square foot national anchor tenant. The other tenant spaces, the other 40,000 square feet roughly, will be on Rosemead, turning the corner and on to Las Tunas. We're looking at restaurant tenants, a multitude of other types of commercial enterprises, pursuing actively right now and aggressively national tenants in all tenant forms, be they grocery, be they variety, be they restaurant, whatever. It's very important that we're looking at national tenants here as a draw for the neighborhood as much as anything else. We're currently completing demolition of the existing utilities on the site, and we'll be moving very quickly into the off-site utilities portion. We hope to have our grading permit in place within the next 2 to 3 weeks, and shortly thereafter the full building permit in place. We're looking at roughly a 2 to 3 month process of grading and excavation and construction process through next year, looking at completion of the shell for tenant move-in and tenant development by the end of next year, or by roughly January 1 of 2014. I'm sorry. Oh, any questions at this point? I do not know. But the excavation has gone down about roughly 10 feet along Rosemead, and you may be able to see it as we pull up closer. We've not encountered any water at all. It has not been voiced to me as a concern. It's been designed, the subterranean parking has been designed around the soils analysis. The analysis obviously has said that there is not a water problem. There are no sump pumps that I'm aware of for addressing that type of issue, so I would not think that the water table is a problem. We're going to move as quickly as we possibly can on this.
I have a question that you said we are trying to attract the national thing. So who is doing it? As a city we are doing, or those investors?
The broker for the project is the company that I work for, Colliers International. I'm a third-party project manager on the project helping out our developer. Those brokers are actively pursuing the national tenants. I wish I could talk more about those national tenants, but we're limited because of the confidentiality arrangements at the critical point we are in the lease negotiations right now.
Want really good ones.
Only really good ones, absolutely. I'll vote for that. Ones that are going to be successful and here for a long time and an improvement to the city, especially the city tax base.
The property owner for the Gateway has told us that they, have pretty close negotiations with Chipotle and Flame Broiler and some good smaller restaurants like that. But we're looking forward to some good tenants there. Now we're going to talk about the Temple City Marketplace here at the northwest corner of Las Vegas and Rosemead. This plaza was originally developed with a redevelopment agreement also back when we had redevelopment, which is gone now. But as part of that redevelopment agreement, there was a lot of restrictions placed on it because the city really wanted to try to get only sales tax producing retailers in the site. So they had a 10% limit on non-retail service type businesses and a 15% limit on restaurant space. So it really, over time, hampered the property owner from developing or filling vacancies in the site. And as the economy recently downturned, the vacancies really shot up to almost 20% at the site. So early last year, one of the things that, as part of our economic development efforts that we did for this site was to amend that DDA, we call it Disposition and Development Agreement, that's the redevelopment agreement for the site, to raise those restrictions so that now they can go up to 50% restaurant space, unlimited restaurant space and up to 50% non-retail service type space. And as you know, in our city, there's a lot of businesses that are office or service related that are great businesses that they could not attract to this site. But on top of that, with that restriction, it was limiting national retailers from even looking at this site, or larger, better retailers to consider this site. So currently, though, this being an older site, we're looking at that and other ways to adaptively, upgrade this site and reuse this site in better ways. They have some parking challenges here. We're considering changing our parking standards, which is before the Planning Commission in our next meeting, actually, to change some of our standards to allow redesign the parking to get a few more parking spaces in here, which is just make the retailers happier to come in. So things like that. There's some challenges at the site. This site is not underparked. It's actually at the minimum level for what we require in the city. But to go beyond that, it's been some challenges. With that said, I'm going to turn it back over to Brian so he can talk about some of the retailer recruitment efforts that have been going on the site.
Thank you. All right. Well, as we know, this site is probably about 20-25 years old, and from a commercial leasing standpoint, this is an old center. The smart thing about this center, though, is that they've been allowing to remove walls. The property owner is she knows retailing. She knows how to fill space, and she's realizing with an older space you have to reinvent yourself. It's kind of like rock stars that continue to reinvent themselves, like Steven Tyler or whoever. That's what she's done, and she's realized what her market is. We talk about national tenants, which are good. National tenants are good for brand new developments because they have a specific model in mind. When you have an older shopping center like this, you've got to think a little bit more creatively. How are you going to get the national tenants in? And then also thinking about what this region is. A little fun fact that Wendy Chung in my office had given me was 50% of the West San Gabriel Valley is Asian. And of that 50%, 60% are ages under 40, is age 44 and under, and that's mostly affluent families and those that are second generation, meaning maybe they grew up here or they came to the States at a young age, but they're very affluent. Where Susan Liu is going with this shopping center is twofold. Right now she's looking at taking the Starbucks out and making it a drive-through. So there's plans right now for a Starbucks drive-through, and in its place where Starbucks is right now, bringing in that Habit hamburger restaurant. The other thing that she's looking at is how do you start tapping into the greater Asian population of the San Gabriel Valley, this affluent population. And this is the second generation, the ones where they grew up here, went to college, came back. So there's 3 new affluent restaurants going in. One of them is the Jazz Cat, the other one is 85 Degrees, and the other one is Guppy House. And these are very affluent. They're very successful, and I think they'll be a good addition to this center. So any questions?
These are in your packets. Some of the renderings of some of these businesses, and for example, if you see the Guppy House one shows seating in the front. Right now our code wouldn't allow that seating in the front, so that's one of the things that we're also considering changing in the code. Okay? Any other questions about Temple City Marketplace? We're going to move on to the next item, which is Rosemead Boulevard. Guppy House is actually almost ready to open in the next month or so. They're doing the tenant improvements. That one's been approved. They have a conditional use permit. 85 Degrees is still in negotiations, the final negotiations with the owner. And what was the other one? Jazz Cat, they're still in negotiations. But it's a positive to have that level of these very popular new restaurants to consider coming here. It'll be a major draw, as Brian was saying. It's a major draw to this area because they're regionally regionally and internationally known. 85 Degrees, for example, is more international. They're very, very big in China. We're not supposed to say this, but they're considered like the Starbucks of China because they're competing with Starbucks in the same center. We're not supposed to say that.
I had heard there'd be a conflict with Starbucks with that. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
I said I heard that there might be a conflict with Starbucks with that.
Yeah, there is, because they both.
Is that why she's changing to a drive-through one?
Yeah, that's why we're trying to give Starbucks some incentives to say, hey, you know, there's ways that this is going to help you. So we're considering the drive-through, yes. As we go on to Rosemead Boulevard, again, most of you know a lot about that. It's become an $18 million project to develop a grand boulevard for Temple City with Rosemead Boulevard. That's going to be basically very multimodal with new bicycle lanes and seating nodes and new public art. So, as Brian was saying, it's creating an enhancement in a great infrastructure improvement, but it's also creating an improved destination for the city. And again, there's some good graphics in your packet, Rosemead that I picked out that shows some of those things, the seating nodes and the bike lanes and so forth. But the funding for that project, just to reiterate, there's 14 sources of funding. And very little of it is actually city or general fund. 386,000 of that 18 million is actual city general fund that was actually money that was given to us from Caltrans when they relinquished Rosemead Boulevard to the city. But there's about $6 million in grant funds, and there's about another $8 million in transportation-related funds that the city normally gets through gas tax, etc., and the county Measure R and things like that. And then there's some other local funds like redevelopment funds that we have some bond proceeds left over from our now dissolved redevelopment agency that we're trying to use for this project. So the city has done a very good job of leveraging funds and getting grant funds for that project to make it a grand project, and that's one of the things we're going to try to do as well on Las Tunas. Same kind of process. Let me look at construction. Oh yeah, we're going to be starting. That project is actually now finished design and is out to bid for construction. Just as of the last 2 weeks, it's out to bid. We just sent a letter out to the local residents within a 500-foot radius of the project. So you may hear, if you guys, any of you live within a 500-foot radius, you might see those letters or hear about those letters. Just kind of talking about that timeline and that the project's coming. And then we plan to award that bid the next couple of months. But right after we award that bid, we're going to have another community meeting for this project. It's scheduled right now for November 19th. So that's where we're going to talk about what's going to happen in the construction, what the phasing is, etc., what the traffic plan is going to be. Basically, the phasing is going to go from south to north in 3 or 4 phases, depending on what the contractor comes back with. We're recommending like a 3 or 4 phases from the south to north. One of the reasons for the south to north is because we want to make sure that this main intersection gets done in coordination with when the gateway is done, as well as to avoid the holiday seasons as well. But basically it's going to be still one lane open in each direction, but phased in quarter sections basically. They're going to finish one section, then go to the next section. So it's not going to be the whole street with construction all at the same time. So we're going to work very closely with the businesses to make sure that they have good signage and access during construction. Yes?
What is south and north boundaries?
South boundary is at the railroad track, just north of Laura Azusa is the south boundary, and the north boundary is at Kalita. Yeah, just north of Longdon. What else do we want to say about that? Yeah, as I mentioned with the construction, there's a lot of lessons we learned from when they did the county side project on the north on how not to do certain things. And one of the things they did on the county side was it kind of took a long time to do the construction. They did not build it into the overall bid project to make sure that got done in a timely manner. And so we're going to do, we've addressed that in a number of ways. One is that we're going to consider doing some night construction in the commercial areas to expedite things, but also the phasing program we have is designed to happen in sections, but also so it's not everything's done at the same time. And we're going to have we have a very big outreach program to let everybody know what's going on. We're going to have a radio station. We're going to have an AM radio station, which is
AM 1690.
AM 1690. So look for that. You'll hear more announcements about that. Website information, and again the community meetings that I don't know if they did those on the county side. But we also met with some other local cities that have had some good success with the way they've done that construction. Like Alhambra had done some good things on Main Street, so we learned some lessons that we've applied to this project. And we've got a very good team with construction management with Banner and Gruen as the architects that have done a lot of these kinds of projects. So we're looking forward to a good bid coming through. As we go forward, we're not there yet, but one of the things I wanted to mention was up on the left-hand side, there's an existing billboard where there's a car wash and service station at Olive. And as part of our economic development efforts, those billboards were scheduled to be taken down. And the city worked to come up with a creative process to allow digital billboards where they could rebuild those billboards but be much nicer digital boards. And in this case, in this particular property, that enabled a reinvestment in that property because they couldn't, it's coming up here on the left, this one here. They would not have reinvested in that property if they did not have that billboard income. So as a result of this arrangement, we actually have a public-private agreement with them to actually remodel and upgrade that whole site, which has been approved, and do the digital billboard for 40 years is the agreement. And as part of that, the city will get 1 out of the 8 slides that rotates through that digital billboard for community announcements and public announcements. And also there's part of that agreement is that local businesses can get a 50% discount on the advertising on that sign. So it seemed like a good public-private partnership to do that. Anything I missed? Any questions about Rosemead?
What's the traffic flow?
Traffic flow, actually it's gone down a little bit. It was probably up over 40,000 a few years ago before the economic downturn, but it's down closer to the lower 30s right now in Rosemead. Las Tunas is about the high 20s. So at that intersection, you're getting close to 80,000 cars at peak times, or per day. I'm sorry, that's per day. Any other questions? Yes. Okay. We're making our way to the old lumber yard on Lower Azusa, along the Eaton Wash, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with as you live here. But it's now vacant. It used to be more of a lumber warehousing kind of a site. So there's not much there. There's a couple, there's one building that they used for an office, small building, and an old metal structure. So it's basically a vacant site. So they've been marketing the site for a couple of years now, and given the economy and given that the uniqueness of that site, there's some challenges with it being long and only having one access, and just given the economy, they've been looking at all options. But what you're going to hear is that they actually are under contract right now with a very well-known, reputable housing developer to consider putting housing there. Basically, small lot, single family, detached, and possibly some attached townhomes that hasn't been finalized yet. But the point is that it's something that the city's interested in supporting because it would help provide some new housing for the city, which is in high demand. And that smaller lot, larger units is something that's been a trend in the city of Temple City. People want to live here and have those high quality, larger homes, but they also like the school districts here. So it seems to be making sense to consider that. There are other challenges that it's near a railroad track, so it would actually require a 20-foot sound wall to mitigate that sound, the noise from the railroad track. So as part of the negotiations, the city might consider, again, a development agreement with them to provide something like public art along that wall. But since it's also along the Eaton Wash, that's planned both in the city's bicycle master plan and the county's bicycle master plan to have a bike path along Eaton Wash. So it's an additional amenity that seems conducive to having residential there and making some regional connectivity for a bike path. And I just want to see where we're at here.
Encinita.
So it's currently in zoned industrial, so it would require coming back to the city for considering a zoning change and general plan amendment. But since this would help support our housing needs, it's something that's being strongly considered. There is a flyer in your packet for the marketing flyer on this site. Since it's dark out, it's probably easier to look at that than it is to look at the site. But again, this is a major importance to the city for economic development, because not only does it bring in people who are potential customers for our businesses here, but also for property values. To significantly increase the property value here helps the city's property tax revenue. Yes, sir, Jerry.
I must admit, I've been in Temple City 57 years. I always thought that this was Rosemead, not Temple City.
Yeah, Jerry's saying he thought it might have been Rosemead, but it's actually right on the border, so yes, it is Temple City. Yeah, there is a piece that fronts on, that's a different property actually, that fronts on Baldwin, or no, Temple City Boulevard, that's half in El Monte and half in Temple City actually. Okay. Unless there's any other burning questions, we're going to turn over to the Chamber of Commerce, to Peter Choi. Okay?
Hello, good evening. Good evening, future leaders of Temple City. All right, I feel like Tina Turner in Mad Max. Okay, and if I was wearing shorts, I'd look like her. Brumcha. Anyway, hey, it's great. I haven't been on a field trip since 8th grade. Of course, instead of sitting next to the cute redheaded girl, I'm sitting next to Steven Missoura. And even though he keeps putting his hand on my leg, it's just not the same thing. But anyway, exactly, it's been mutual. That's how we stay awake. And now that we're all awake, I want to talk to you about the Chamber of Commerce. In all seriousness, the Chamber of Commerce is a nonprofit organization. And one way to look at it is, there's three main organizations in the city of Temple City. There's the Big McGilligorilla City Hall, then there's the Temple City Unified School District, and then there's the Chamber of Commerce. And the Chamber of Commerce, you know, is a membership-driven nonprofit that focuses on the business community. And our focus is on helping the businesses grow. And as I said to the City Council in my very first meeting, our focus is dual. We focus on our membership, and we focus on economic development in Temple City. Our members are very diverse. You know, we have everything from large banks to small businesses, local nonprofits of all sorts, professionals like real estate agents and doctors and lawyers and tax accountants, and you know, your local churches, community groups, as well as residential members. And they all come together because they understand that when you have a community of any sort, and especially a business community, you're stronger. You know, 5 fingers in a fist is stronger than 1 finger. And people that understand the mission of this chamber. you know, we are a small organization. We have a staff of 2 and a board of volunteers. And it's really great because we have a new board, there's a new energy, and, you know, they work together to create everything that we do. Now, what do we do? Our primary assets really are our website and the fact that we publish the city's newspaper, the monthly Temple City Life, which you may have seen around. You know, again, we promote our members, we help them grow. We promote Temple City as a place to meet, shop, and dine. We promote Temple City as the center of the San Gabriel Valley. This is a mantra that I always tell people. Temple City is not in the north or the south or the east or the west, it's right in the center. Just as the Gateway is in a prime location, so is Temple City. And by getting that word out, you know, you just keep getting that message out and you attract people to come and think of Temple City in a different way. Our Chamber's focused on economic development. You know, we passed the Gateway project. The Chamber, as an independent organization, is able to do things that the city may not be able to do due to time or other constraints. With the Gateway project, we were invited by the Gateway developers, the board chairman and I. The Chamber was invited to go talk to investors about the EV5 investment program and encourage them to invest in this project, because when you're all the way over in China, you don't know what this project is. It could be photos on the internet. And so we went over there to let them know, you know, that this is a prime 3-acre property. It's not by the train tracks or a strip joint or, you know, in a bad part of town, that it was right in the center of town. And by having, you know, community leaders like our board chairman, Nick Pon, and I go to Shanghai and Nanjing and speak to them, it helped, you know, encourage them to invest. And I think that was a good thing. You know, we work with the city on events like the recent Dine Under the Stars. We partner with community groups on other events that they do. And, you know, part of the things that we do to promote business is these white envelopes with the business packets that you have. Those are welcome packets that the Chamber puts together. As I said, we're membership driven. What that means is if somebody walks into the Chamber and they want a realtor or they want a locksmith, we recommend our members. That's a membership-driven organization. And these packets are what we give to our new members and to new businesses that open the city. It's a way of welcoming them, giving them a sense of the other business in the community, but also it's a way of marketing our members to these new businesses. It's kind of win-win. And we're always running out of flyers, and so if there are any members on this bus, drop some off. Let's see. You know, we do work with the city on a lot of different projects. I won't go into here. I'm trying to do broad strokes and bullet points. And if anything is remotely interesting, then you can hit me up at Green Island and I'll tell you more in detail. Sorry? About filming, one of the things that we're working with the city on is contracting our film services out to a group called Film LA. Temple City has had very little filming, but it's a beautiful city. Las Tunas Drive, you know, the last time it was used actually was as the main street on that TV show Wonder Years, because it stood in for the 60s. But, you know, as I say, City Hall could be great for Mad Men. You know, Mad Men should do a legal scene in City Hall. It's built in 1960. Our city park is a fantastic asset, and there are, you know, beautiful streets without the restrictions of filming in Pasadena. So we're encouraging, you know, economic development by getting Film LA to handle all the permits, and they also provide a film database that encourages location managers and producers and production companies to come into the city. When companies film in a town, they don't just pay the film permit, they also buy coffee from Starbucks, they run to the 99-cent store for extra supplies, they get a second meal, which is usually pizza or something on the go, and so they bring in all this extra revenue. And it's also good for residences because they see a cute front yard, they may do a second scene over there, and they'll work out an arrangement with the houses. And we have beautiful houses, we have beautiful streets, and we have a beautiful city. That's one of the things that we promote. We do mixers and networking events for our members. We do ribbon cuttings covered in our paper. And, you know, I attend a lot of meetings and legislative events as well. Again, we help a lot of local nonprofits and churches. And then again, we put out the newspaper, the Temple City Life newspaper, which, you know, as I like to tell our advertisers, is the best way, is the only paper dedicated solely to Temple City. And if you want to reach the 35,000 residents of this city, advertising in this paper is the best way to reach them. But also, it's a way to help the community beyond the business community, the social community. We cover everything, and if any of you have ever any stories that you'd like to put in, contact me. I'm accessible, and again, I'll talk to you about it then. We're going to wrap it up really quick. very simply, you know, there's a saying that I'm thinking of, which is, it's a favorite saying of mine. It's John Lennon's saying, life is what happens while you're making plans. So even as I tell you what the Chamber is doing now, there's always new ideas coming up. Because we're a small organization, we can move quickly. And so again, you guys are here because you're interested in the city, because you're interested in how the city works, and I think you're interested in joining, you know, all of us to help make the city better. So again, if you have ideas on economic development, on business development, come to me, talk to me. Not necessarily tonight, but anytime. Our chamber is open Monday through Thursday, 9 to 5. And you'll find that we're a friendly bunch, an efficient bunch, and we've got a really great energy with our new board. We've got the wind behind our backs, and so I encourage you to come by, check out one of our mixers, but certainly let me know if you have any ideas, because that, you know, is what always keeps us fresh. So thank you very much, and I'll turn this over to someone else.
Yeah, that basically is it. You're gonna, you know, we talked about downtown parking. You can see the parking lot's pretty well full right now. That means, you know, sometimes having a parking problem is a good thing. That means your businesses are doing well. There's a lot of downtowns that wish they had a parking problem. You know, they don't want to have all these empty spaces with no one going in their stores. So it's a good problem, and we're almost ready to finish our downtown parking plan and study that is going to address some ways to improve the parking in the downtown. But you'll hear a lot more about that soon. Yeah, that's all I have. Do you have anything else, Brian? Okay, that's it.
If you've been to a Chinese restaurant, you know that it's different from an American restaurant. And one of the things that King said was he thinks that the perspective between Chinese and American restaurant operations is different, whereas an American restaurant would be more service-oriented. King said that it's not so much that Chinese don't, the businesses don't care about service, it's more about providing enough service for you to be satisfied, but then they focus on making their food quality but at an affordable cost. So yeah, and then any questions?
There's a manager here, so what about the owner? Is the owner here also?
It's owned by a corporation, and actually they used to do traditional Chinese food.
So they have more than one restaurant?
Yeah, they actually have another Green Island in Monterey Park.
Okay.
So, yeah. And then they used to do Chinese banquet style restaurants, but then it was because of the competition, they thought that they had to think outside of the box, and that's why they came to Temple City. That's why they had this new style of restaurant.
And he's very happy and successful, and models are working well.
Yeah, definitely.
Is it beyond what he expected?
One thing I didn't get a chance to ask him, yeah. But one thing Brian did tell me was that it was after Green Island opened that sequentially all these other Chinese restaurants started coming in.
When was that? When was that? Do you know? When they opened? When Green Island opened?
2000.
It's been the last 5 years.
It's been here for 5 years or so. Okay. They've passed the threshold.
And the reason why we brought people to Green Island was because it's not the marginal businesses that you see on Valley Boulevard. These are businesses. These are businesses that multi-million-dollar investments. Tea Station, $2 million investment. Green Island, when you walk in, easily $1 million. What's another one? A Golden House. Yeah. I mean, so there's multi-million-dollar investment coming on Las Tunas, and if the Chinese investment didn't come here, we'd have vacancies, and that's just the reality. So it's good to have the high-end investment. So with that being said, we also did this as a way to stall you while they're trying to clean the tables. So we're ready to go in and eat and enjoy yourselves, and it's on the city. So thank you for coming.
Back then, on Main Street, it wasn't as crowded. I think they're doing a pretty good job there. Yeah, exactly. Right? But